everyone. Hi, I'm Joti Balani. I am the founder and managing director of FreshRiver.ai. We're a conversational AI strategy and delivery consultancy for the Fortune 100. And I'm joined here today by Sean King, the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Commercial Enterprise. Now, that's a happening hot spot. So tell me, you guys have been, you're like all over the place. I love it. Some of the demos you guys have given. Let's talk a little bit about the sports sections that you guys are going after, right? Tell us about the new relationship you've got with StatsPerform.
We're really excited to have a partnership with StatsPerform. StatsPerform is one of the leading data providers for sports and entertainment globally. And so with us, we're able to take their data that they're coming in from right now primarily soccer matches that are coming on. We're ingesting that data and using some NLG, reprocessing those to actually be able to give you a live play-by-play using some of our synthetic voices there to just make all of these games that are not seen on television or not covered readily accessible to all the soccer fans across the globe. And being able to make those engagements in numerous different languages. So if you're sitting and watching a game in Italy, you're actually able to hear that game in Italian.
Wow.
Or if you're sitting in the US, hearing it in English, and just being able to add an extra layer of personalization and both localization to those games, and just to be able to create better fan engagement.
Sure, I mean, that's really immersive if you think about it, right? Because today it's almost like there's a flat delivery, and now you're changing it in such a personalized manner. So what has StatsPerform set relative to Game Changer, excuse the pun, relative to what they're trying to solve for? Like, what are the metrics of success, fan engagement, or other things? What are they
I think there's a couple things. Obviously, more first and foremost, accessibility of these games. You know, so many times in broadcast, you're limited to what you can see or what broadcasters are willing to cover, either on TV or terrestrial radio or streaming platforms. Here, it's all the other matches that you're not getting the chance to follow.
Right.
And being able to have that accessibility to be able to see that. And also for other leagues that are not covered, women's sports, other, random events more like lacrosse or other games like that, just being able to make sure that everyone has a seat at the table.
Right.
And regardless of what you're a fan of, there's a way for you to be engaged with that team, engaged with that sport, and just being able to have that here. So, I mean, we wanted to make sure sports was brought to the masses at a scale that's never been done before.
No, clearly, I think this is almost not even an evolution, right? It's not a step function. I think this is pretty revolutionary compared to all the other tech that we have, right? If people have taken, between the web and now mobile, right? Mobile consumption of games has been pretty good because it's about people being able to keep up with the games. But you've taken it to the next level, is between languages, between the commentary that runs, because fans love that, right? They want to be part of what's going on.
Exactly.
So, in your view, what are some of the challenges you guys are seeing in here as you go deploy this technology out?
Geez, I mean, some of those challenges is like also kind of curbing what's the art of the possible.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy for us to go try to solve Mission Impossible
Yeah.
and not lose sight of all of these real examples today. Our long-term vision is like synthetic media at scale.
Yeah.
So how can we then take this and not just do it with the voice and with the live action widget, being able to see and visualize and not just hear the play-by-play, but what would it be like to actually being able to do this in a full simulation of that game?
Right.
And be able to do those things. So, I mean, we have a rich history in media, entertainment, and advertising.
Right.
And so bridging those gaps so it's a fully immersive experience. So you're not just able to watch the games, but actually get some commentary by the side. Oh, it's 75,000 people here at Wembley today. The weather is X. And by the way, this was brought to you by X sponsor. And really be able to deliver a rich, immersive experience in these is what we're most excited about.
Probably at lower cost too, right? You don't need as many humans to produce this because you've got AI that's actually giving you the lift, right? Synthetic voices.
Exactly, because this is not about replacing what's there. It's about making accessibility to those that can't get to it.
That's right.
And those. So it's creating opportunities, and more importantly, it's creating entertainment and creating fan engagement.
Correct. So as we talk about that, do you see job losses coming from DJs and sportscasters and weathermen? Because I think you guys talked about it earlier today. Synthetic voices are very famous people, right? Would people prefer listening to somebody say the weather or the sportscasting in a famous voice versus some of the more not known but less known sportscast, etc. Is there any danger that they would lose their jobs?
No. I mean, there's definitely the need for live talent at all times. This is like another tool that these voice actors should have in their toolbox. What's their kit? Because if you're a voice actor, your voice is your instrument.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it's your tool that you're using of your trade.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you are sick or God forbid something were to happen to those ones here, being able to have that, so you'll still be able to use that, but also there's a time and the place for everything.
Yep.
As of today, synthetic media has come a long way, but there's still always going to be the place where you're going to want that live person there.
That's
to be able to have that. If there's a certain emotion that you just have to evoke, or a certain tag or catchphrase that you're using from those, you want to be able to have that. But it's also about all those opportunities you're not taking because you're committed to something that's live.
Right.
An example that we've always given is like if you created like a full studio film, or if you've done a voiceover for a whole thing, yet there's this one little snippet that didn't get right, or we need to redo that. Getting that person all the way to be able to come back into the studio, or just saying, oh, here you go, what do you need me to say?
Right.
Here you go, and being able to have that accessibility to be able to use it. It's again, I'll view it as it's a tool that every talent needs to have in their toolbox.
So catching on from that, right? Does the talent control how much of that is used? You talked about the rights, right, of the voice. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So, I mean, we stand by the premise of just because we can doesn't mean we should. Exactly.
I love that.
So we don't create any voices without two forms of consent, a written consent and a vocal consent, because that's part of their fingerprint.
Yeah.
It's their vocal fingerprint. So, yes, we have the ability to be able to create that, but it's that talent's decision on how they want to use it. It's theirs to access and use. If you want another usage of it, or you want a company to be able to use it, you have to give the right to let that company be able to have it.
Right.
So there's still that ongoing, approval process that every talent's going to have.
Yeah.
And so, for example, if you're a person of high, we could say very famous person, simply put, you may say, here's my vocal clone that I have. Okay, I'm going to give access to this to my family member and to my business partner or my agent. Those are the only people that have. So if they want to come on and use that one, he or she's already granted permission for that person to be able to use it.
Yeah.
So we'll look at that person, that's an approved usage from those. And if they're not there to it, then obviously we're going to bring that opportunity to the talent.
It's almost like a power of attorney, right, for somebody who can use that.
Exactly.
It's almost also keeping it, I call it cool and creepy. I say AI is always cool and creepy, is actually people who have passed to have them live on.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, to the keynote that, Ryan Steelberg gave earlier today, that's one of those things, like you really need to make sure you're claiming that very quickly within it, because it does become part of public domain.
That's right.
And, we stand by a firm line in the sand on our ethics for what we're going to do.
Sure.
And so even to those ones that we've done these things for people that have passed, we've had express consent from their estate, as well as everything, the training data that was used to create it, expressed from the content owners of that. So
now people can actually grab this content and train algorithms, right? Because it's the genetic code of the voice. Are you concerned about, fly-by-night operations grabbing the stuff that you guys are helping create and they're taking the deep fakes thing? How much can you police that?
Well, that's a great question. And it's very challenging in the fact to be able to police it, because you'd have to be thinking about all the things that you'd have to be monitoring at the same time.
Yes.
I mean, and there's very few companies that globally that could even afford that process of being able to do that. On our stance on those is any output that comes from any one of our models has a unique fingerprint towards that model. Okay. So that's kind of when we do the consent is building that vocal fingerprint. And that fingerprint's important because that fingerprint's included on every output. So while we can't necessarily police against nefarious uses globally that's there, if we get a piece of that content, we can confirm, this output was done by your confirmed clone, so whoever you gave access to this, may have used that from those. So we can at least be able to check our own work, so to speak. So there was, I think, a story, was it Bruce Willis, whose voice is being used in Russia to run political ads? I don't know if you heard about this story. I have not heard of that one. It's really insane. So I think those are some of the things, but you cannot control all of that. It's just like brands cannot control how their signage is used or their logos are used, right? Although there's tech to do that. This one actually could be more prolific, but I think it does more good than harm. Correct. So I think it's people just have to make some decisions. What are the next 12 to 18 months looking like for Veritone? Any sneak peeks? Well, no, I think we are, again, all in on all things voice and synthetic media for us. And so you're going to see a lot of different new use cases that you're going to see coming out over the next 6 to 8 months, even forward looking to 12 to 18 months, that we're really excited bringing. And what we're going to see is, I think, a large commercial adoption of synthetic voice as a way to just create new opportunities for those that are using those, but also be able to create new forms of engagement.
That's right.
And again, because I think what people miss out on is the human can only do so much.
Right.
And in the holy grail, from my standpoint, of being a lot in the media, entertainment, and advertising is, delivering the right content and the right tonality and the right message to the right person at the right time. And we think this is a wonderful tool for anyone that can really take it a step further. And how can I personalize it to the individual? How can I localize it to wherever they're listening to in the appropriate dialect or language that's there? And it's just an extra dimension that you get to add to those.
Right.
So it's delivering the right message at the right time to the right person and in the right voice.
Yeah.
And we're just really excited to kind of see how this continues to evolve.
Final question. So one of the topics in conversational AI is the user that's using or speaking with an AI assistant, whether the AI assistant should actually say that they are driven by AI and not an actual human. Do you guys have a stance on that as you create synthetic?
We do, and really at that point, our stance is that we want to support our content creators, and that's there. We do suggest at any point in time, especially if you're doing like a localization, if we're taking someone's podcast and they want to create it in Spanish and using those ones, as even suggesting saying, hey, just as an FYI, this was created using synthetic voice. This is the approved voice of so-and-so person you're hearing in this language. But at the end of the day, we just want to provide the tools. We'll let the content owners and content creators ultimately do that.
Yeah.
But we definitely, as part of our commitments with the Open Voice Network and the IAB, is just to make sure that we're providing those best practices to those groups, so that way we're encouraging safe use around this.
Yeah, and it has to be in the hands of responsible people. Because I always think about fans, like I also produce a show. How would my listeners feel if I said, hey, this is actually not me, but it is me? I translate it into other voices. The benefit is more people get to hear it in different languages, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering whether we're crossing any lines, right, as things. So for example, in the metaverse, there's questions now around people knowing whether what they're listening to, somebody standing next to them, which could be synthetic voice, is that an ad or is that a real person, right? A lot of questions coming up, right? So I think it's going to be very interesting times for us. So.
No, it's definitely going to be interesting. But and from those, it's not like things we haven't seen before. When we went from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to digital from the other ones. So it's like we're going to have to, of course, those painful challenges of relearning our lessons again and again as we go through. But I think as long as everyone, and that's why I love like this community here at Voice, is like everyone's kind of leaning in to choose what are those right standards, what are those right ethics that we all need to hold ourselves accountable to. That's why I think this kind of community specifically is very special.
I see the genie's out of the bottle and it's not going back, right? Sean, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it. All right, take care.
Thank you.